Coming up on the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast, new evidence in support of steroids to fight a certain kind of sarcoidosis. And Sarcoidosis Awareness Month, a great success. Stay tuned, it's all coming up.
This is the Sarc Fighter podcast, living with sarcoidosis and other rare diseases. Here's your host, John Carlin.
Hi, and welcome to the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast. Good to be with you today. I have some good things to talk about. I hope you're feeling as well as you can be. Today, by the way, is May 13th of 2026. And yes, I am late with the podcast. For that, I do apologize. By way of explanation, there's a fine line, as I learned from my father growing up, between an excuse and an explanation, but I'll call this an explanation. I have been working to interview a new and major advocate for our cause, national level advocate for our cause, but twice that person has had to cancel at the very last minute. These were legitimate, important cancellations with good reasons, as this person has much more important things to do, as you will find out, I think, in the coming weeks, if we can bring this to fruition. But so there's been a couple of times when I had guests lined up, and then I waited, and then it didn't happen, and I waited, and it didn't happen again, and all of a sudden, I didn't have a guest. So that's where I'm at. So I do apologize if you are among those dedicated folks who I appreciate so much, who look forward to the every other Monday release, but here I am. I just want to let you know that I am working with the staff of this mysterious person to iron out a new time to talk. We have scheduled another one for about a week from now, a little over a week from now. So that's coming, and I am sure that you will find eventually it is a new reason for hope, and that is why I do this podcast to begin with. I want to give you hope, want to have you see what's going on with sarcoidosis. I want to give you straight talk without so much of the sometimes I go online and I just see people getting near hysterics when they're writing about it. And that's certainly warranted in many cases, and that's a great way for people to express themselves. But when I was first trying to figure out what was going on with me and with sarcoidosis, I didn't find it extremely helpful, just watching other people vent without being able to get real, actual information. And so that's why I try to bring you this, and I try to give you my background as a reporter as I sort of vet my own work, such as it was. So that's where we are. I do have to tell you, I'm not going to lie, I have been busier in the last 2 months than I have been for several years. And the reason is that I am once again full-time as a reporter and anchor at the television station where I work. That's WSLS 10, the NBC affiliate in Roanoke, Virginia. So what happened is a little over a year ago, I decided, and I talked about this on the podcast, that I was going to try and help a nonprofit with their fundraising. And it's something, this was a group that I had worked with off and on for many, many years. And they offered me an opportunity to come over, and I said, you know what, I think I want to do that. And TV news at that particular time, there were a bunch of things happening with the direction of news and with the direction of the news within the station. And so when this opportunity came along, I took it, and I really, really enjoyed it. I did. But after a year, the tug to get back into TV news full-time. And I did keep anchoring the news every day, but I was considered a part-time employee. So during that year, I would go to work, I would do the fundraising, but at 4 o'clock every afternoon, I'd go over to the TV station, I'd put on my suit and tie if I wasn't already wearing it, and I would do the 5, the 5:30, and the 6 o'clock newscasts. But at that point, one of the things I really also wanted to dispense with was the 11 o'clock news. I've been doing the 11 o'clock news forever and ever and ever throughout my career. And one of the things I wanted was a more daily existence. So the fundraising throughout most of the day, then anchor the news, and then go home. Well, after a year of the fundraising, which went very well, by the way, that did go very well, and we raised a lot of money, and I think I helped. I think I found it better. I left it better than when I found it, as they say. I decided to go back full-time to the TV station, but now because I'm no longer doing the 11 o'clock newscast, thank God, I am working during the day as a reporter, and then I'll go out in the field and I'll do stories. And then I will still come back and I'll still anchor the 5, the 5:30, and the 6 o'clock news. Well, what happens is you go to work and you don't know what the news cycle is going to be. So you show up at 9 o'clock in the morning and we have an editorial meeting, and all of a sudden the assignment desk says, well, this happened and this happened and this happened. And, maybe you're aware of it, maybe you're not, because we do cover an area the size of 25 counties. So maybe one of our rural counties had a murder overnight. I mean, you never know, right? You never know what it's going to be. But so I tend to lose a little bit of control of my day. Whereas before I was the person who was either calling meetings, or I could choose to attend a meeting, or I could schedule a meeting, or, do pretty much whatever I wanted to do in terms of my calendar. I no longer have that luxury, right? So when I was doing the 11 o'clock news, the other thing is I went into the TV station at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which left my mornings free to do things like work with the number of nonprofits that I work with, including FSR, including this podcast. So now I no longer have my mornings free. And boy, I am really giving you a long explanation that's starting to sound like an excuse, and I'm sorry. But this is also a fact. I'm pursuing stories almost every day. Once you get onto a story, usually that story has to also air that day, so now bring in deadline pressures. So if you start out at 9 o'clock in the morning from a dead start, you go out, you do the interviews, you shoot the video, you come back, you write the story, you edit the video, you put it on TV. By then it's 5 o'clock. And oh, by the way, you have to do some social media, and you also have to put it on our website. So, and then you also have to be ready to go and look all spick and span for the 5 o'clock news. So by the time I get home at the end of the day, I have been exhausted. I'm starting to feel like I've got a little bit of flow going on here. I'm starting to feel like I can kind of anticipate the openings in my day. In fact, I found one so that I could prepare the written portion of this podcast, my notes that I use when I'm giving you everything that I say in the podcast. I don't just open the mic and start talking. It's always somewhat structured. But anyway, it has just been a couple of months. And so between the fact that I no longer have that time and the fact that my person has canceled on me a couple of times, ergo ipso facto, I'm a couple of days late, and I'm sorry. And I will tell you in the meantime, and this is a topic that I've been keeping you up to date on, which has almost nothing to do with sarcoidosis. My Achilles recovery is going as planned. It's a bit frustrating that the healing doesn't happen more quickly, but it is doing it about the way the doctors told me it would. So I still cannot stand on tiptoes if I do it only on my left leg. The strength just isn't there yet. So I can go tiptoe on my right leg, I can go tiptoe on both legs, but if I try to push up onto my toes with just the left leg, it's nada. Having said that, I am remaining committed to doing this bike ride I've been talking about across Virginia, which is part of the nation's and Virginia's 250th birthday. So 10-day ride across the state. Starting on the Kentucky border and riding to the coast and arriving in Yorktown, Virginia, historic Yorktown and Williamsburg on the 4th of July for fireworks and the celebration of the 250th. So, and that's what I'm doing. And training through this Achilles is not been the easiest thing in the world, but it is happening. I am doing it. I'm still optimistic. Last week, I did my hardest training ride to date, including a 6-mile climb on the Blue Ridge Parkway. That is over an hour of constant climbing without any relief. But now I will tell you that when you turn around and you come back down that mountain, Now that's fun. I mean, you don't have to turn the pedals once for over 6 miles. And if you get down into a little bit of a tuck on your bike, you zip up to over 40 miles an hour pretty quickly. I think I hit 43 coming down before I decided maybe I shouldn't be tucking anymore, so I just sat up. But yeah, that's fun. But on the way up, man, I'll tell you, it's just agonizing. It's just you're kind of fighting for every pedal stroke. But makes you feel good, makes you healthy, and it gets me one step or one ride closer to my goal of riding across Virginia. Now, but here's a little bit of perspective. When I look at the Achilles injury, I'm really struck by how minor it is, right? I mean, yeah, I was on the couch for a month. I had my foot first in a cast, then I had it in a boot. I wound up using the knee scooter to get from my car to my office, and then I learned to use crutches. I got really good at crutches at the end, I'm going to tell you. And then I used one of those electric scooters to get around at Disney. So there were some things that had to be done to workarounds because your leg doesn't work, right? But as of today, I'm just over 5 months since the surgery, and that's the thing. When it happened, I was devastated. But the doctor said I would be good if I just gave it time. And now that the time has passed, you hear me talk about these bike rides. I am mostly normal, right? I'm walking around with no trouble. If I don't try to test it by standing on my tiptoes, you really wouldn't know, right? And I can see the difference in the performance on my bicycle. Because I'm a little slower, but I'm out there walking. I can do short hikes. I can mow the lawn, yada, yada, yada. Compare that to my sarcoidosis, which is on my spinal cord. It's now been 10 years since diagnosis. The tingling and the neuropathy that make my life miserable have not lessened one iota. Not one iota. So that's 10 years of not getting better, right? And there's no indication that it ever will get better. So I'm lucky because my sarc is under control. There's always the prospect out there of another flare if all of a sudden the medication stops working or my body starts rejecting it, or all the things that can happen that the doctors all of a sudden say, ooh, we don't like the look of this blood test. We want you to come off of this medicine. Let's try another one. And with me, they're pretty much out of medicines, right? I've been through the whole menu, the whole regimen. But what they've got me on now is working. So, but if I have a flare and I have more damage to my spine, then who knows what level of disability that I might be facing then. And as I've talked about on the podcast before, and as you probably know, your spine doesn't heal, right? So if somebody has a bad spinal injury, that's how they are for the rest of their life. So that's why you have your paraplegics, your quadriplegics, people who've been in accidents. I think of Christopher Reeve falling off that horse years ago, Superman. That's what happens. Your spine is one of the parts of your body that doesn't heal. So if I have another flare and that flare wants to leave behind a little residual damage, then bada boom, bada bing, where am I going to be? So sarcoidosis versus ruptured Achilles, that's an easy one. I'll take the Achilles every time. So maybe that's a little bit of perspective. All right, coming up, I'm going to have for you a brief message from FSR's CEO, Mary McGowan. She's going to talk about all the initiatives that we had for Sarcoidosis Awareness Month and where they landed. And also, I'm going to tell you about a new study that shows how effective prednisone can be in treating a particular kind of sarcoidosis.
I feel like a zombie, just feeding and stumbling.
Hi, I hope you're enjoying the Sarc Fighter podcast. You may be wondering, what can I do to help? How can I be a part of the sarcoidosis solution? It's simple. Make a donation to KISS, Kick In to Stop Sarcoidosis. 100% of the money goes to the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research. Look for a link in the show notes of the Sarc Fighter podcast. All right, welcome back to the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast. It is now May, and Sarcoidosis Awareness Month was April, so it's behind us. But the Steps for Sarc campaign saw us collectively take over 3.2 million steps. There were 14 teams with 86 different fundraisers, more than 200 patient registry signups, which is fantastic, and more than 1 million social media impressions. And volunteers led more than 15 events, and that is not counting the educational webinars held by FSR. I think there was about a half dozen of those. So CEO Mary McGowan put out a short video thanking the Sarc community for coming out. Here it is.
On behalf of FSR, I want to thank each and every one of you for helping the world to see sarcoidosis, making this year's Sarcoidosis Awareness Month such a powerful success. Because of your passion, your advocacy, and your generosity throughout April, our community came together with significant outcomes. Not only did you help raise nearly $30,000, but you also unlocked a $25,000 matching gift, bringing the total raised to $50,000 in support of sarcoidosis research, education, and patient programs. That impact is real. It fuels critical research, expands resources for patients and families, and brings us closer to better treatments and ultimately a cure for sarcoidosis. What makes this even more meaningful is the global reach of your efforts. We saw participants from around the world stepping up, sharing photographs, sharing stories, raising awareness, and standing together in support of those impacted by sarcoidosis. That sense of unity is what drives progress. Whether you donated, fundraised, participated in an event, or helped spread the word about seeing sarcoidosis, you played an essential role in this achievement, and we are deeply, deeply grateful. Thank you for standing with us, for believing in this important mission, and for continuing to move the sarcoidosis community forward. Together, we are driving change and making a real difference. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mary. That was great. And that you can see that video on the website. Of course, you only hear the audio portion here on the podcast. I've not become advanced enough to figure out how to do all this in video and keep it something that I can get done on in a timely fashion. But there is more reason for hope to talk about today. There's a new study out from the Netherlands, and it shows that corticosteroid treatment leads to rapid improvements in people with renal issues or kidney sarcoidosis. I believe it's called renal disease or kidney sarcoidosis of the kidneys. So I'm going to read to you, this is from May 12th, 2026, some of the findings, and this is again from Sarcoidosis News, and I'm sort of cherry picking the highlights of this report. But it says, our findings support a treatment protocol starting with prednisone, followed by a gradual tapering and the addition of steroid-sparing agents in case of relapse in this patient population. This is according to the researchers. They noted, however, that future studies following patients over time, quote, are needed to optimize treatment strategies and identify predictive markers for relapse and response. And it continues, even though renal sarcoidosis or sarcoidosis involving the kidneys is uncommon, timely recognition and treatment of kidney inflammation are critical to prevent progression to kidney failure. However, quote, there are currently no established guidelines for optimal treatment, and appropriately controlled trials are lacking, the researchers wrote. To learn more, the researchers in the Netherlands conducted a retrospective analysis of data from 29 people with sarcoidosis and biopsy-proven kidney involvement who were followed at 6 different hospitals in the country. And just a little bit more about the study. About 2/3 were men. The median age at diagnosis of renal sarc was 56. Kidney problems were the first presentation of sarcoidosis in most patients, 71%, while the remaining patients developed kidney involvement about 2 years after initial sarcoidosis diagnosis in other parts of their body. At the time of renal sarcoidosis diagnosis, participants had elevated blood creatine levels and severely decreased kidney function. All patients received steroids, and the median initial dose was 60 milligrams a day, so that's high, right? As the first line of treatment, with maximum improvement in kidney function seen after 1 month of treatment. After that, there was no further improvement. So if you were going to get better, it happened in the first month. That's what they're saying. And the study continues, although a large amount of fibrosis is seen, there's still a fair chance of improvement of kidney function in response to prednisone, the researchers wrote. So a 1 to 2 month prednisone trial is justified in all patients. Prednisone dose was gradually decreased, reaching a dose of 10 milligrams after 6 months, which is what they typically do. That's what they did with me. We went from 80 down to 10, and then from 10 we kind of went 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 until I stopped, right? So that sounds like that's probably something, if you've had prednisone, that you're familiar with. Back to the study, almost half of the patients, 48%, experienced a relapse of renal sarcoidosis after a median of 7 months from the start of treatment. Nearly half of these patients were no longer on prednisone at the time of their first relapse. Get the prednisone, get improvement in the first month, they start to taper you down, and then 48% of the patients actually had a relapse. 45% of patients required treatment with additional immunosuppressive corticosteroid-sparing drugs, and that's when we get into the whole menu that I won't list. But again, those are all of the there are many of those drugs, and many of you listening to this have had all or some of them. So you can only take the prednisone for so long before they go to something else. And that happened to me. You know, they dosed me down and it came back. And so then they dosed me, they put me on prednisone again, and then hit me with a different regimen of drugs. And luckily that time it caught and it's been working. But that's a pretty common refrain in the people the patients who've been on the podcast and talked about it. By the way, that article is written by Andrea Lobo, PhD, a science writer at BioNews. Also, I want to tell you this. FSR was at the American Academy of Dermatology meeting, and they are saying that there is a lot of progress in treating sarc of the skin. So I'm cherry picking this from the FSR website, but it's brand new, and I thought I'd share it with you. It says, for a condition like sarcoidosis, there has long been under-recognized in dermatology. This kind of spotlight is both overdue and very welcome. So I think I misread that, but basically what they're saying is like, look, dermatologists have not spent a lot of time thinking about sarcoidosis, but as of this particular conference, they are, and they talked about it a lot, and they had some findings. It says cutaneous sarcoidosis is the second most common form. It occurs in about 30% of patients. In FSR's patient registry impact report from 2025, 22% of participants reported a diagnosis. The most common reported skin symptoms in FSR patient registry were plaques, 41%, abnormal skin pigmentation, 32%, and papules, which are small raised bumps, 31%. The Medical Dermatology Society meeting, which took place the day before the AAD in 2026, featured, that's the American Academy of Dermatologists 2026, featured a highlight on the new data from the Beacon clinical trial, which is a study of a medication being tested for cutaneous sarc. Beacon is the first clinical trial in cutaneous sarcoidosis to report positive results, which is a strong signal that companies and researchers are finally investing in targeted therapies for this form of the disease. So that's good news, right? For patients, this means that real, evidence-based treatment options designed specifically for sarcoidosis skin involvement may be closer to reality. And then just sort of a wrap-up, a summary from that report basically says that it means that skin sarcoidosis is gaining visibility at one of the largest and most influential dermatology meetings in the world. Second, it shows that leaders connected to FSR are helping to guide how dermatologists think about diagnosing and treating granulomatous skin disease. And finally, it offers real hope that the next generation of targeted treatments could bring safer, more effective options to people who have long relied on flawed therapies. And we talk a lot about flawed therapies here on the podcast. I think I've made vague references to it 3 or 4 times already today. So as these studies move forward, FSR will continue to keep the patient community updated and to advocate for research that addresses the full impact of sarcoidosis on both skin and overall health. All right, so couple of good updates today. We've got the skin sarcoidosis update and the beacon test, which shows a lot of promise. And then we've got the study from the Netherlands looking at improved treatments and continued study of renal or kidney sarcoidosis. And I'll be back with a wrap-up right after this.
I feel like a zombie, just feeding and stumbling.
Well, I hope you found this podcast, even without a guest, to be somewhat helpful and to give you a bit of hope and understanding that there is work being done out there, that we're all kind of facing the common foe with prednisone, but that it does work. It's showing some promise. They're continuing to study it, and they're continuing to find secondary lines of defense after the prednisone either does or doesn't work, right? And I try not to bore you too much with the story of my Achilles rupture, but that is kind of front and center on my mind. So thank you for putting up with me. This is a really good time to contact me. We're heading into the slow season. I would really like to interview some more folks here on the podcast. Reach out to me at carlinagency@gmail.com. Usually it just involves you clicking on a Zoom link with me, and I'll interview you wherever you are, and we'll find a time when we can both do it, and we'll record it, and then you'll be here on the podcast. And so I'm always looking for researchers. I'm looking for caregivers, looking for SARC patients with any kind of SARC. If you've got a unique fundraiser that you want to talk about, bring it on. Bring it on. We'll talk about the fundraiser, and we'll talk about whatever sarcoidosis led to the fundraiser. Okay? So carlinagency@gmail.com. The official Sarc Fighter song is Zombie by Mark Steyer and the White Hot Lizards. You can hear Mark's story, the story behind the lyrics, in episode 12, and an update from Mark in episode 118. Normally, as you know, I release every other Monday. As I'm speaking today, my trusty dog Dougal is curled up in the chair in my office, and Shandy, my adorable rescue mutt, is circling my feet as I speak. If you're new here and you're just trying to figure out what SARC is, try listening to episode 2 with Dr. Simon Hart. My story is episode 1. Again, please send me an email. It's in the show notes, carlinagency@gmail.com. And until next time, keep fighting.
Learn to suffer, you feel pain someday. Learn endurance, your strength will fade away. Dead man walking, trying to keep up the pace. Dead man walking,